We know. We know that the letter Vav, which means and in Hebrew, the letter Vav connects one idea to another. As a conjunction, it would, wouldn't it? And this week's Torah portion, which begins with the letter Vav, Be'ela, and these are the names, is meant for us, the reader, to understand that Genesis is connected with the second book, the new book that we're about to read, Exodus. That it's a continuous stream, that we might believe that in closing one book, we've closed, as it were, a single story, and we're now going to open a second, disconnected story. The letter Vav disabuses us of that notion. This is one continuous stream, one great story that is connected from the beginning of the universe to the beginning of the Jewish nation, with which the book of Shmot, Exodus, commences. This is important for us to understand, say our sages, because it is not just stories that entertain and enlighten and sometimes confuse and get us angry, but it's where these stories ultimately lead to that matters most of all. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotz gives two very powerful insights for us, the reader of this week's Sidra, to be cognizant of. The first of them is that he says that each one of the names of the sons of Jacob, the tribes of Israel, which are named at the outset of the book of Exodus, each one of them stands for something larger than himself. Menachem Mendel says, take for example the name Reuben, Reuven. What Menachem Mendel of Kotz tells us, teaches us, is that Reuven stands for Re'eh, Ra'iti et oni ami. Look, I have noticed the suffering of my people. What Menachem Mendel tries to make us cognizant of is that at the very outset, each person of the book of Exodus, each person a child of Jacob, each person an individual in the physical realm in their own right, stands for something larger than themselves. They stand for an idea. He goes on to say, Shimon, Simon, is Shamati. I've heard the pain of my people in Egypt. And this very much connects with what we said just a moment ago, that it is one continuous thread, one contiguous story that may start with one person, Abraham, but it ends up with a nation, and the story is graduated from one point to another. Everything is connected, and everything means more than just what it seems at face value. To drive home this point, the same Hasidic master, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, goes on to tell us that the purpose of this book of Exodus is to teach us halakha, is to teach us modalities, ways of behavior, what we're supposed to do. You see, it's not so much about reading how other people have behaved, but it's extrapolating to our lives. What is expected of us? To a very large extent, it doesn't matter what we think, unless what we think informs what we do. What matters most of all is how we behave, what we do with our feet and our hands, how we speak to other people, what we utter, what we do. That's the whole concept of mitzvot. That drives, it is the engine that drives Judaism. Mitzvot is ways of behavior. Mitzvot are the commandments that God said, these are the things that I want you to do. So Menachem Mendel tells us that at the very outset of the book of Exodus, these are the behaviors of the Jewish people. And you'll note there are very few instances in the book of Genesis that indicate how we as Jewish people are supposed to behave. Yet at the outset of Exodus, almost everything, almost every page is filled with how we are supposed to act in life. And finally, one other brilliant insight from the same Hasidic master, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, who says that the way that we read the book ultimately is a reflection of who we are. In other words, if we are to read the Torah as the story of anger, as a story of jealousy, as a story of bitterness and revenge, More often than not, he says, that's a reflection of who we are, not it. If, on the other hand, we read the Torah as a story of compassion, of hope, of redemption, of renewal, of possibility, even when we've taken the wrong road, that we can go back to the place where we went off the path and take the right road, then that too is a reflection of who we are. Therefore, he says, analyze how you read the stories of our ages past, because that is a reflection of our soul. And if you don't like what you see, change it. And then look for redemption in those pages. Redemption as a people, and perhaps even more critical to Rabbi Menachem Mendel's thinking, redemption as individuals. Shabbat Shalom.